Today we're looking at assignment 02.18, which is not on my screen, which is understanding how genes are inherited, or meiosis and its functions is the title of the assignment. So the goal of meiosis instead of mitosis, remember mitosis was about taking chromosomes like this, duplicating them, and then splitting them apart so that we could copy cells and make identical copies. Meiosis isn't about making identical copies. It's about taking perhaps an organism with a couple sets of chromosomes, maybe something like this, and dividing it up in such a way that it's going to be divided into half, so that each organism gets half as much DNA that the original, or each daughter cell gets half as much DNA that the original cell had. These daughter cells are sex cells like sperm and eggs, and they're going to be used to combine with another organism to be able to create a whole set of DNA, or a diploid set again. So what you're going to look at in this assignment is some of the original ones here. Why is it necessary to make sex cells only have half as much DNA as the parents? If we had a parent organism that had diploid sets, so it had 2 copies of long chromosome and 2 copies of the short chromosome. Remember, these things are all mixed up in the cell. If we took another organism that had 2 longs and 2 shorts, and we just put their cells together, this is going to get out of control with way too many chromosomes too fast, and eventually the cell is going to be just full of nothing but DNA. So to be able to keep the chromosome number consistent, we take this, we duplicate this, and we divide it a couple of times, so that eventually we end up with a gamete that might look like this. It's got or a gamete that has this DNA in it. It's got 1 long chromosome, 1 short chromosome, or it might look like this. It might have a different variety of that chromosome, or it might look like this. Okay, there are different varieties that are possible in making sex cells, and those sex cells combine with another organism's sex cells to restore the diploid number. So on here, we're looking for human sperm and egg. We start off with 23 pairs of chromosomes. So we start off with 46 chromosomes in our body cells, right? 46 total chromosomes. Our gametes, our sperm and egg, only half of that 46. Okay? And then fertilization takes these, along with maybe some other ones from another organism, puts them together, and we get 46 again. Okay? So that's the breakdown of meiosis, making sperm and egg, and fertilization. Gametes are the sperm and eggs. Remember, haploid is half, diploid, that's double, right? So think about that to be able to answer your answer here, and just underline one of them. And what is an example of a gamete I just did? You're going to compare the DNA from meiosis and the daughter cells and the parent cells. We already did that. And recombination is probably the hardest section within this. So I'm going to try to model this a little bit for you. And then I'm also going to link a video that I made. No, I'm not. I'm not going to link a video that I made. You guys don't have time for that. So recombination works like this. Let's say we're looking at an organism that is diploid, and it's got 2 copies of this long chromosome, 1 from mom and 1 from dad. And it's going to be taking these chromosomes and duplicating them. So duplicated, and then dividing up the cell so that we have haploid gametes like sperm or egg cells. Recombination is something that only happens during meiosis, which gives variability to the following generation. So these cells in part of meiosis, meiosis 1, will line up, these chromosomes will line up with one another in the middle of the cell. In metaphase of meiosis 1, it looks really similar to metaphase of mitosis. And these should have the same types of genes on them, And their sequences might be different because one of them is from mom, one's from dad. So these are homologous chromosomes. They undergo something called crossing over. And this happens quite a lot within these chromosomes. And specific proteins break and then reform these at somewhat random locations to make new combinations of chromosomes. It should have been off. I was off by one spot. So they make and reform them to make new combinations of chromosomes. When this division takes place, we split these up. That's meiosis 1. Then meiosis 2, each one of these gets split up again. We've got this variety of chromosome that's going to one of the sperm, this variety that's going to one, this variety, and this variety. So why is sex such a huge advantage, and why does this sort of stuff give sexually reproducing organisms an advantage? It mixes up the genes and makes more different combinations of things that can be possible. More combinations gives that species and that population a higher likelihood of having some individuals that do better than others and passing their genes on. Being able to live, being able to survive, being able to reproduce to the next generation is the most critical. So you're going to take a look here. This gives you some information about like the genetic possibilities in a particular organism, and we're going to look at combination within them. And you have some cartoons that try to show you some stuff that's going on in here. It's not necessarily going to be easy to work on these if you're not logged into Google. But once you are logged into Google, I think you can use the drawing tools to put stuff in the text boxes, okay? And I think you can copy these and move them around, okay? So hopefully that makes sense here. You should be able to do that sort of stuff on there and then get your answers to show up in the different stuff. In terms of your gene combinations, you guys can figure out how to answer those. But if it's really done in the picture, I'm going to be happy. Okay. Crossing over hopefully will make sense for you guys based on these guys that I just showed you. So without crossing over, we wouldn't have stuff. Sorry. Without crossing over, we wouldn't have these chromosomes here that are mixed together. Okay. So having these mixed together, you could inherit, for instance, a chromosome that is mostly from your maternal grandpa, so your mom's dad, but it's got pieces of chromosome from your maternal grandmother on it. And so you don't have to necessarily inherit all of those genes together. They can get mixed in the process. And they do mix in the process, giving you and every sexually reproducing species more variability.